What did we learn last week?
We learned about different CS variables, at media, variables, and a lot of pseudo selectors.
Yes. So we learned about like nth child and the way that we can kind of tag on to our CSS selectors and get access to kind of more advanced ones that allow us to target or select our different properties. We learned, hey, CSS isn't all just cut and dry, right? We can use variables. We can use a color in one place and then reference that and not have to, memorize the hex code and put it all over our code. Which makes it much easier to change things out. And then we also learned about media queries, right? Sometimes we only want to say, hey, the CSS applies if our screen is a certain size. So that is all good kind of leveling up our knowledge as we go, kind of seeing best practices and moving on from there. What else from last week? How are we feeling about the homework assignment? Is there anything, any concepts that we covered that you want recovered? How are we feeling?
Could you go over root again?
Sure. So I won't dive into the code there, but the basic idea of root is that we can't apply CSS without a selector, right? Every time that we write some CSS code, it has to be in some kind of selector. And so what root does is it gives us an opportunity. It's kind of a placeholder selector to say, hey, this applies to everything in our code, right? This applies to kind of the root of our code, the genesis of it, everything that every piece of code that we write is all contained in the root of the website. And so that's why we use that for CSS variables, because we want to be able to use our variables anywhere, right? No matter what selector or what tag it's in. And so that's why we use root as kind of the placeholder selector to say, hey, this applies to all of our CSS, no matter where we're using it. Anything else? Any other concepts? Exona, go ahead.
Hi. So I kind of wanted a little bit of a if you could clarify, like, I know that we've been working on this, but I'm still having a little bit of a difficulty understanding when do we use margin and when do we use padding.
Okay. Yeah, so that's a good one to do a quick example on. Let me share my screen. Share one here. Go into VS Code. Let me. Okay, so I'm going to open my downloads folder as just a quick placeholder where we can throw code in. And I'm going to create, you don't have to follow along here. This is just for the sake of an example. So I'm going to say box model.html. I will hit go live on that and do my exclamation point enter for my doc type. Let me get this positioned out right here. I stop and go live again and move this here. Okay. So let's say that we've got two divs, right? We're going to do an ID equals top here and another div down here with an ID of bottom. And then we're going to literally just put the word top and we're going to put the word bottom. Now, of course, we could externally link our CSS, but just for the sake of a quick demo, we're going to do it all in our style tag, right? So when we do our top, we want to say, hey, there's a border around that whole thing of 1px solid black. And when we target our bottom, we want to do a border of 1px dashed and blue, just so we can tell them apart. It would help if I put 1px. Okay, so we've got our top and our bottom. Now, if we want some space between the bottom line, between the bottom of our top line and the word top itself, we're going to apply padding. In other words, if we want to push the border itself down, that's when we want to use padding. So we're going to say on our top, padding on the bottom is going to be 10px. Now you notice that that borderline got pushed down.
Okay.
But we may want to say, no, I don't want the space inside the border, which is what the padding is. I want the space between the border and whatever the next div is. So that's going to be our margin. So if we say margin on the bottom is 10px, now we get a space between the border and the next div. So there are times that they are interchangeable, right? There are times where we're saying we don't have a border, so we can use either padding or margin, and it will work just the same. Though the times that it is different is when we have that border, and it's going to control whether things go between the border and the content, or if it goes between the border and the next div.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
It does. It makes it a little bit clearer. Yeah. Thank you.
And it can be confusing because you're like, well, I did padding on the bottom and I changed it to margin and it did the exact same thing. And it's like, well, if you don't have a border, most of the time it will do the exact same thing. But by separating out margin and padding, you want to think about it kind of as, am I adding space to the inside of my content, or am I trying to move content outside of it to push it down or move it around?
So if you're pushing it down and moving it around, that's margin. But if you're adding padding within the border itself, that's padding.
Correct.
Gotcha.
And you can visualize that by going into inspect. And I'm just going to blow this up. I'm going to zoom in on it. If you hover over the div top, you can see the difference in that like greenish and the orange-ish. The green is always going to be our padding. Our orange-ish is always going to be our margin. And if we come down all the way to the bottom of that column, we can see what we call the box model, right? So this inside piece is going to be for our content. That's what the browser is calculating how big our content is. Then we kind of see the padding between the content and the border. Then we see the border itself, and then we see the margin. So if you ever wanted to play with those numbers, you can actually double click on them and adjust them, and it will live update and kind of show you that. But that's not changed in your code, right? This is kind of just a playground environment to see what it will look like. So if you hit Command R, it will go back to normal.
Yeah, that example that you just gave with the border, yes, that one, that's really great. The way that you just explain it, I kind of, for future reference, I kind of wish that you would explain that a little bit earlier, because then it would give us a bit of a more of an understanding of what's the difference between padding, border, margin, and all of that. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I did link to this as an external resource, as one of the, like the W3 schools has a page on box model, and they've got a visual that looks just like this. I definitely could have pulled that up during class though, and like explained through that. The thing with DevTools is I know maybe about 3% of the features in DevTools, and every time I learn a new feature in DevTools, I'm like, dagnabbit, why didn't someone tell me that that was in there? Like, it's this really helpful thing. And so I will endeavor to teach you one of the 3% of the DevTools that I know, because there are so many helpful tools in here that if you try and sit down and learn it all at once, you're going to be like, I'm never going to be a programmer. Like, I'm never going to be able to get all of this. But when you learn it in the moment of actually using the tool and being like, oh, I now know that this is a screw, so I shouldn't pick up a hammer, I should be using the screwdriver. That's like what DevTools is. Like, yeah, you can hammer a screw in, but DevTools is giving you all of these options to help you kind of pick apart the difference between what your code, what you think your code is doing, and how the browser is actually seeing and rendering and handling all of your code. And that's what DevTools is so helpful for, is kind of peeking under the hood of the browser and being like, so browser, this is what I told you to do. What are you actually doing? And these visuals like the box model can certainly help.
Perfect. Thank you.
Karen, go ahead.
Now, I don't know if this is a stupid question, but I noticed that when you, or maybe somebody else asked this, earlier or so, but I noticed that when you're typing your code, there seems to be like a ton of pop-ups that, come under it.
Mm-hmm.
Is that for you specifically? Like, does your computer just know you and it pops up, or is there like a set? Is it set that way?
So
I don't know if that's a stupid question.
So these pop-ups, you should be getting them as well. It's not, just me. But what these pop-ups are doing are they are pulling from the Mozilla Developer Network, or MDN, which is this open source. It's maintained by Mozilla, who are the same people, the company behind Firefox, essentially. And they are a much more technical version of W3 Schools. So W3 Schools tends to be more beginner-friendly documentation in terms of, here's what you need to know in order to be able to understand what a div is, right? So the W3 Schools for a div may only be, a page long or something like that. In MDM, they are going to tell you at an engineering level every feature that has ever existed with a div and every argument that has taken place in order to come up with a standard of HTML of what a div is.
Okay.
So these pop-ups, I don't use them because I know what a div is, right? So those pop-ups tend to get in the way from me, or if I'm using it, I may see an autocomplete there, right? So if I do an arrow D and I, it's going to show me all of the HTML elements built into the standard of HTML that are available to me. So if I go down and hit enter, it will actually autocomplete it for me, which is helpful.
I see.
But if you're like, I don't know what a div is, Max has been using these divs all the time, and I don't know what that stands for. If you read it, it says it has no special meaning. It represents its children. It can be used with the class, lang, and title attributes to mark up some code. And then if you click on this MDN reference link here and hit the open button, it will give you the documentation from the HTML standard, breaking it all down and really doing a deep dive in here, right? So different examples of it, how you can style it using classes, how the CSS gets applied to it, going down into the standard. This may be more in depth than what you're looking for, but it does give you a lot of information about all of that, right? So if you're up here and you're like, I don't know what this meta thing is, what you can do is just click on the word meta. It's going to give you a quick little definition. And then when you open up the MDN reference, again, it's going to give you the whole breakdown. It's going to tell you whether it's permitted. It's going to tell you what all the attributes are about it, all of that kind of stuff. So knowing what we are teaching you is not just do this and the computer will do the right thing. It's understanding that HTML is a standard, right? And when we say a standard, we mean that it is an agreed upon thing that all the browsers say, hey, when I see this body tag, I know the body is going to impact the browser in this way. Whether it's Safari, whether it's Firefox, whether it's Chrome, whether it's a mobile browser, whatever it is, because all of them use that HTML standard, that means they all agree on the syntax, they all agree on that kind of stuff. Now, there are sometimes that browsers don't agree with each other, or a browser will implement a newer feature that is not agreed upon yet as the standard. And so when we're using a lot newer features, sometimes older browsers are not compatible with them. For example, in Internet Explorer, depending on how old of a model Internet Explorer is, it doesn't support Flex. Well, most modern websites are using Flex now in order to lay out content in an easier manner. Back in the day, everything was done with tables. Now, if I saw you laying something out with a table, a little part of me would die inside because we haven't used that in web development in well over 10 years. So if you did that in a job interview and you said, oh, I'll just lay all of this out on a table, I would be like, oh, no, they have not updated their knowledge in a long time. They're not using a grid system. They're not using Bootstrap. They're not using Flex. They're not doing all of that stuff. So that kind of all plays into that of if you're looking at some of this code and you're like, I don't know why he did hashtag bottom, you could look in here and it's saying, hey, this is going to target some element with an ID of bottom. And you can get a little bit more information about that. But sometimes more information is too much information.
Sure.
Oftentimes we will find something is under-documented, rarely over-documented. But when we're looking at something as big as HTML, oftentimes we get to that over-documentation, which is why I hesitate to recommend MDN, which is what VS Code links to, and instead would suggest that oftentimes when you do a Google search for it, you will get links to both MDM and W3 Schools kind of in the top 2 results. I would recommend personally leaning towards W3 Schools, but if you're someone who learns by saying like, I want to know every piece of what a div is and how the browser thinks about it and all the attributes I can use on it, MDN is going to be a better site for that.
Gotcha. Thank you.
If at any time I appear that I think I've answered your question and I definitely did not answer your question, always feel free to call me out on that because God knows I can rant and sometimes I rant in the wrong direction. Any other questions from either the homework assignment from last week, any light bulb moments where like we got something done, whether it's the homework, whether it's something we did in class and you're like, something clicked? For Xona, it was the box model and seeing that visual, like that's awesome. Anyone else have any like light bulb moments where you're like, I feel like I can do this? Or Trell, go ahead.
Yeah, I mentioned it to you in our one-on-one, but I didn't put it in Slack. But I was working on my code and I didn't see it update, and I was getting frustrated. And then I realized I had changed windows in VSC, and I didn't hit the live share or the go live or whatever rather. So
Yep.
I didn't. Once I did that, I saw it update. And that was like an aha moment for me. But I was getting mad because my code was not updating. I knew I was putting in the right code frame.
Yeah, it's funny. We rely on our tools so much, right? That's why I wait to introduce Prettier so you guys can get a hang of the indentation, right? Now you see me writing code and you're like, oh my God, his indentation is so bad because I just hit save and Prettier fixes it for me, right? So live share is one of those things that back in the old days, dating myself a little bit here, when we did web development, anytime we made a change, we had to refresh the page, right? But then we get used to our tools doing it for us. So when the tool breaks or we don't have it fired up quite the same way, it can be really frustrating being like, you know, why is my drill not working all of a sudden? And we realize the battery died. Same thing for live share, right? Sometimes it gets disconnected. Sometimes we have the wrong one open. So when you start questioning your sanity, sometimes it's not your code. Sometimes it is the tools you're using on your code. Anything else from last week that we wanted to touch on? Okay, so let me fire up the outline here. I'm just going to go ahead and close that. I'm going to move this to the bottom. I'm going to get this out of the way here. Let me pull up. Nope. Quick note, Mac OS Ventura dropped today, which is a new operating system update. you are welcome to upgrade your Macs to that. It is a free update. If you go to Apple and System Preferences, it will have an option to do a software update. I highly, highly, highly encourage you not do that until after 8:30 tonight, because it is a 13 gig download. It is a very large download and will take over 45 minutes to install. So you will get booted out of class for a while that install is going through. The update is optional. However, part of being a software developer is keeping your code updated, because there will be new features as part of the tools that you're using that are reliant on the later operating system. So I would encourage everyone to go ahead and install that. It does not cost anything. Like I said, it just takes a while to install, but once that install goes through, you'll have access to some new features like Stage Manager, which are a different way to manage your windows. So we've been using Mission Control a lot. That's when we swipe up here and we get our virtual desktops, and we're able to manage windows that way. Apple has released a new feature called Stage Manager that allows you to kind of group your windows together. I haven't played around with it enough to tell you whether I love it or I hate it, but it's a new feature that's available to you for free. So if you guys update, you can wait until the weekend. You can do it whenever. You can choose not to update, but I do encourage you guys to do that at some point. That update is free. Just be aware that your computer needs to be plugged in, and it's going to put you out of order for about 45 minutes while you go through that update. The other thing is Ariel is out this week. She was supposed to be RTA. So Caitlin is covering for her. Caitlin is a cohort 1 graduate who has been with the program all the way since 2019, and is also my coworker at TUZAG. So I cannot get rid of her this week. That is quite all right. If you have any questions, feel free to hit Caitlin up in the Zoom chat or in Slack as you would any other TA. We try to rotate through our TAs, and unfortunately, we had so much enthusiasm for TA signing up that Caitlin was not able to get a spot. So I am glad, while we will miss Ariel, I am glad that Caitlin was able to slide in here. She has a ton of great experience and has been through this program like all of our TAs have. So feel free to utilize her as the program goes on. While I'm pulling that up, Caitlin, I don't know if there's anything you want to say or throw out. I know you talked at the kickoff ceremony, but I'll hand the floor over to you for a second.
Just hi again, everyone. It's good to see you all actually in class this time. It's really exciting. So hopefully everything's going well so far. And yeah, like Max said, I'm not TAing too much. I'll just be like filling in here and there in case something comes up for any of the other TAs. But as the program goes on, I will send out like my Calendly, and you guys can feel free to book one-on-one time if you need help with anything. I'm not always available, but I'm pretty available. So I'll just make sure my calendar's up to date, and if you guys need anything, feel free to reach out. Like Max said, I've been through this before, so that definitely helps give a different perspective there. So, and sorry, Max, because you get 12-hour days with me this week.
Caitlin is a great example of a success story. After the program, she landed a position with Raymore and Flanagan, and was there for a couple of years. Kind of got her feet wet, got out of entry-level developer territory and into junior level. And then I couldn't stand her talents going to waste at Raymore, so I poached her for our startup company. And Caitlin has now been working with us for a couple of months there, and has had a salary boost from where she started as a teacher into Raymore and now into TUZAG. So major success story for the program, and one we like to tout and show off.
Thanks. Yeah, that's been awesome for sure. And fun, not to mention fun.
Currently, in case you're wondering what Caitlin and I do at work, currently Caitlin is in battle with Amazon, working on getting what Amazon calls a skill working, which is basically a smart speaker application. So Caitlin has been taking the charge in having our code interface with Amazon's code so that we can have conversations over Alexa. So
very difficult.
Okay.
Amazon's very picky.
Yes. All right, so what we are diving into tonight is going to be a several day project, as most of our projects are. We will be recreating the Netflix homepage. So if you pull up the week 5 day 1 outline, which before you say it, I probably am realizing is not live in Canvas. So let me go fix that. Okay, that is now live in Canvas. If you want to go ahead and refresh your page, you can actually get access to this. I will dump this link in the Slack as well, in case you don't have Canvas set up or loaded up, I should say. I know you all have it all set up. If you pop into this Maxflix mockup and pop that open, this is going to be the screen we are recreating. So I know this looks like a ton of work, and it is. We're going to be working on the next 3 days on getting all of this functional and working. In the meantime, if you want to go ahead and hit this download button, we're going to go through the process that we've already gone through a gazillion times here. We're going to start gridding it up, and then we're going to start working on that text outline, right? So starting to figure out, before we get into the code, let's do our stepping stones. Let's visually figure out what this design is. Let's lay out an outline so we know what our divs and our different things are going to be. And then let's dive into our code and get the live stream working and all of that stuff. So you guys are probably sick of this process, especially if you can do it on your own. But I do know that different steps of this process are helpful for different people, right? Some people are like, get out of my way, just let me get into the code. And if you can do that, the more power to you. That's really impressive. Some people see the visual and they're like, I still don't know how to help. And that stepping stone for the outline makes it helpful to be able to plan all of that out. So because this is such a big project, we will be going through all of the steps. Believe it or not, this is your last HTML project. We are in the last week of HTML and CSS. Next week, you get a week off from me, you lucky ducks. We will be changing over to DevOps mode. Nathan Evans is coming in, and obviously class will still be fully remote. He will be teaching you all about DevOps and how we can take all of this code that we've been doing locally and what we call deploy it up to the cloud, right? Get our websites live on the internet, how to link it to a domain name, all kinds of fun stuff. Nathan has been with the program for, I believe, 2 cohorts now. And we've really settled into this pace of the order of how we deploy and get our code working and all of that stuff. With that said, I should have Nathan's pre-readings on Wednesday or Thursday. I will send a Slack message once they have been posted. And then I will be posting a metric shitload, not an imperial one, a metric one, of JavaScript resources of pre-reading, as well as some optional homework there. I think you guys have gotten scared from cohort 3 about JavaScript being intense and hard. It certainly steps up the level of intensity of understanding computer science. With that said, the good news is now that you're settling into this project-based learning, that will carry through to JavaScript. So if you're feeling a little bit behind in HTML, JavaScript gives you this opportunity to reset, right? Because we start over basically from scratch with our JavaScript, and then all of a sudden the HTML starts sneaking its way back in, and we start getting more and more of our JavaScript interacting with our HTML, and then we move into React. I've had some people say to me, JavaScript made no sense to me until I started doing React, and then something clicked and it all made sense. Unfortunately, we can't dive right into React because React is kind of if HTML and JavaScript had a baby. So I'm trying to get you guys all set up. DevOps is a good reset. It's going to give you a moment to breathe. It's going to give you a moment to make sure you're caught up on homework. It's going to give you a moment to say, hey, all of this stuff I've been learning is actually live on the internet, which is this really empowering moment. Then we dive into JavaScript. So I am going to try and narrow down what I think are the best JavaScript resources for you guys to learn in parallel of actually learning it during class. What I will say during JavaScript is you will feel like you are asking stupid questions because you'll be looking at the code, You're going to be looking at the output. You're going to say it's doing all what I want. But if there is a single letter that you do not understand, whether that's syntax, whether that's thinking about the way we built that code, whether it's whatever your questions may be, even if you think it is a stupid question, you need to ask it. JavaScript is something that if you let it, it will not only sail right on by you, it will run you over at 60 miles an hour. So as soon as you see that truck coming at you, brace yourself and ask the question. Because oftentimes we can say, nope, you're going along for the ride in the car is not trying to run you over. So very, very important with our HTML, yes, but even more so with our JavaScript. Project-based learning only takes you so far unless you're asking those questions, right? So when you get to that point, whether it's HTML, whether it's JavaScript, do not be afraid to raise your hand or shoot the TA a message or whatever it is. I'm not doing this because I need the practice building these projects. Trust me, I can do these projects just fine. We're doing this for you to learn from them. So if you're sitting there and whether you're coding along or not, if you don't feel that you're actively learning, that's when you need to ask questions, right? You're not in class just to hear me for 3 hours or just see my code working. You're here to make sure you understand the steps we're taking, why we're taking them, and why the code is running the way it is. So you can take that and apply it to your homework over the weekend. Any questions on any of that before we dive into the Maxflix project? We excited? Our final project, and you are off from homework this week for code at least. Next week's homework, which is already published, is all about your wireframes and your capstones. I've met with over half of you at this point, so thank you for scheduling those one-on-ones. At some point, I will find a way to get them built into the class time for this week. Depending on the pace that we're going in Netflix, there is a good chance that Thursday will be kind of open study hall during class. So if I haven't met you with you during capstones, we can do that then. Or if you're stuck on a particular part of your Netflix project and you want to work on it, you can catch up on it on Thursday. Netflix is not going to be due for homework, so you don't need to turn it in for Canvas. It will not be a grade, but this is a project that I highly recommend you do at some point, whether you're following along with me during class or you're doing it, the next day or after class. This is a project that is your line in the sand. If you can build this, even if you struggle through it, if you can build this and understand how you build it, you are doing fine in class. We can use this as a benchmark and we can say you're doing great. However, if you are struggling on this, this is a major sign that you need to say, I need to go back. I need to rewatch class videos. I need to go back through Free Code Camp. I need to find something that works for me, because this is the ultimate benchmark of the last 4 weeks of learning. This is all about, if I can make this, I can probably make any site on the internet. So this is your benchmark. I know that's intimidating, and it's something where you may say, I can't make this now, but I need to bust my butt in the next week or two, get those concepts under my belt and retry this homework assignment, or I'm sorry, this project to see if I can make it. So the good news is if you feel like you're struggling on this, it's not the end of the world. You can catch up, but this is really the culmination of everything that you've been learning and planning for and working on. Okay, we are going to dive in here. If you would like to follow along, as always, you can. I am in the week 5 day 1 outline, which is now live in Canvas. If you can't see it, refresh. I'm going to go to the Maxflix mockup link, which is going to open the image. And then I'm going to click the download button in the top right to get the image, excuse me. And I'm going to go down to my downloads folder. I'm going to go ahead and pop that open into preview. And I am going to see all of my images. So nav bars are consistently one of those things that don't look intimidating. They don't look like a lot, but oh boy, are nav bars hard because of responsiveness and all of that stuff. Now, in the past, we used our Bootstrap navbar, and that built a lot of responsiveness into what we're working with here, right? But because this has so much going on in it, we're actually going to build it from scratch using the grid system. And we're also going to layer in a little flex box so you guys can see how those two can interact together. So what we're going to start is with our row. So remember, rows are whenever we go across the page. Rows are whenever we go down the page. So whenever we see another division of our content moving down, it's going to be another row. Whenever we're going across our page, we're going to have columns. Columns can never span multiple rows. So I'm going to do my rows in green because why not? I'm going to say, okay, we're going to do all of our rows before we do any of our columns. So we go in and we start identifying that out. We've got our first row up there for our nav bar. Now we come down and I say, hey, rows can be any height that we need. So because all of this content is interrelated with each other, this is all going to be our second row. Now, we can sometimes identify whether we need a row and whether we just need a div. But in general, we want to start breaking out that content, right? We want to start saying, okay, where do all of our rows live? So we've got everything in a container. There's no sense in putting that into our visual outline. We know we're going to need that container. But for now, we're going to just focus on our rows. As always, if any questions pop up, feel free to ask them as I go. So I've got my my rows done. I'm sorry, I've got my first two rows done. I'm going to scroll down and start identifying where our other rows are. So in here, because this is its own little content, and we're going to actually make that its own row and then keep going down here, which will make it easier to group all of this content together. Now, while you're working on your websites, we've got a couple images hanging off here. If you don't approach getting that working, that's fine. If you do get that working, that's going to get you in that 3 territory, because the idea here is you can scroll left and right on the images. We're not going to tackle that functionality. So we keep going here and we finish out all of our rows. So we're going to pull that in there. And we should be able to actually just copy and paste these to make it a little bit easier for us. Take that one. That one out and paste and move this down here. Now, this is a real screenshot of my Netflix page, right? This was taken last cohort, I believe. So this is a real live website that we are creating here. Okay, now we've got our rows created. Now we've got to dive into our columns. Now, I think you guys are learning through your homeworks that there are different ways of writing your code that all produce the same output. So I may have different columns than you have, but the way that I'm going to break it up may make a little bit more sense when we dive into the code. So I'm going to create my first column here. And in order to do that, I'm going to take my rectangle that I just added. I'm going to change it to the pink color. And I'm going to say my first column is actually going to be my Netflix logo. What that is going to do is give us more control when we go in to our sections here. So this, the links all at the top, is actually going to be a col 8. And the reason for that is that we want individual control of the spacing of these items, but we still need enough space over here on the right to get all of those items together. So that gives us plenty of room to list out all of our links. And then we can do a col 3 at the end to get all of those last icons working. Okay, now why a 3 and an 8 and a 1? Well, 1 plus 8 is 9, plus 3 is 12. So we have been in the past doing all of these as individual columns. while I'm sure you could make your code work that way, we're going to get more flexibility up here by putting them all in together and applying our own CSS in order to get it looking identical to that one. So now we come down, and this is an interesting one. We come down here and we say, hey, all of this is going to be in one column. And then we come down and we say all of the buttons are also going to be, all of these buttons are going to be in another column over here. And we've got some space here. We want to make sure that there's nothing between, sorry, this is a col 2, between the text over here and the rating and the restart buttons here. So the way we do that is we put in a spacer and we say, hey, nothing should be between those two. So we've got a col 5. We've got a col 5 separating everything out, spacing things out. And then we've got a col 2 to make sure that our restart button and our TV button are in the right spot, our TV rating. Artrell, go ahead.
Can you go over that one more time of why that middle space is its own column?
Yeah.
And one next to it?
Yeah, so we kind of want to push things over to the right. So what we could do is we could say, hey, this is one big column like this, right? But if we do that and the page size starts shrinking down, we want this to stay anchored kind of on the right side of the screen. So what we do is we use a column spacer, which is just a column with no content inside that div tag. So we say, hey, all of this is content all related to each other. Now, we may need to go through here and break this out even further because we're able to see different divs inside of this column, right? Over here, we've got a spacer. We're saying we don't want anything in there, but we need to shove the content in the next column over more. So this column exists just to shove this column over on the right. Now, lots of different ways of doing that. If you say, Max, that doesn't make sense to me, I think this is one big column and all of the content here is going to be text end to get it over on the right-hand side, you wouldn't be wrong. You could do it that way. What you wouldn't want to do is take this column and extend it over. Does anyone know why?
Because of the content?
Because of the content. We want this paragraph to be on 3 separate lines. If we had this as one super wide column, all of this content would spill over on the image. And from a design perspective, we wouldn't want that, right? It's nice visually, now that we've drawn those columns, to see, oh, we've got some content over here on the left. We've got our center space, which we call white space, right? Separating the content out. And then over on the right, we're kind of anchoring everything together with that. Okay, so we're going to come down here and wrap this up. Because we don't have any columns inside of this green box, we don't actually have to make that a row. We can actually make that just a generic div. The only time that we need a row is when we are applying columns inside of our div. So down here, we do have columns, so we are going to need to separate those out. And I should probably be a little bit more precise here so we can actually see where the columns are. And we bring that all the way over for all of our images. And then we are able to replicate that. If I copy that and paste those, I can go ahead and drop them on our other images. Obviously, these are not identical, but hopefully it gives us an idea. Now, the last thing I'm going to do is I want to break this down a little bit more, because we're looking at all of these elements and we're like, all right, I think I can tackle all of those without needing more divs, just using span tags, using our content, getting all of that in. But this is a little bit complex for me. I don't want to tackle that all at once. I want to break that down visually before we get into our code. So what I'm going to do is totally not cheat and get to the right section of my code to make sure that I do this right. Okay, so here I'm going to say this is going to be, and because we're within a column, I'm going to change my color up. I'm going to go to yellow. I'm going to say, hey, one section of our content is there. Now, when I apply my styling, it's going to be much easier to get that Netflix series showing up. The next one is going to be the title of the show. And by the way, as you guys are working on this, if you want to put in your own content, you are more than welcome to. I'm going to have all of these images available for download. They're actually in the outline folder, so you don't need to actually go and source all of the images. This is going to be a, I have all of them for download, so you can just reference them from there. Then we come down and we go, all right, there's another section in here. Then we finally have our text section. And then we get into an interesting spot with the buttons. So we are going to take that, move it down, make sure we capture that. Now you could say here, do I want to use the grid system to space those out, or do I want to just put them side by side? We're going to try side by side here just so you guys can see how we don't always need to rely on the grid system, only when we are able to like identify that and say, hey, is this something that's easily laid out using that table, right? Is this something that I could see in a grid? If it is, use the grid system. If it's not, we're going to learn in this project other ways of doing this spacing. I'm going to shut up here for a minute. Any questions on this? This is our final outline. Everyone feel like if they were doing this on their own, they would be able to come up with something similar. Artrell, go ahead.
So the column which says the end series and Bridgerton and all that, could we have done a card there if we wanted to, or not necessarily?
Not necessarily. So a card is visually defined in Bootstrap as something that has a white background and a rounded border and some buttons at the bottom. So
Okay.
if you wanted it to look like the card, right? If I pull up Get Bootstrap really quickly and go to the card, if we wanted the content to look like this, we could. And I can easily see where you're looking at this and being like, well, visually, the title, the text, and the button all line up with the title, the text, and the button down here. However, there's always a question of, does my final output look closer to the Bootstrap, or is it going to be something better that I tackle on custom? Because you could say, I want to take this card and I'll kind of hack away at the CSS that Bootstrap is providing for me and make the background on it transparent. And then I'll just take out this image, and then I'll be able to modify the button color. And you could take that approach. However, in this situation, it's going to be easier for us to build it custom and layer in our styling than it would be to take all of the styling that Bootstrap is shoving on us and start stripping away at all of it. So it's a great question. It's a great thought. Oftentimes, you just have to ask yourself, is it going to be quicker for me to take something pre-built and modify it? Or is it going to be quicker for me to build that from scratch and layer in my styling on top of it?
Okay, thank you.
It depends. Sometimes the answer is either one. I am someone who tends to lean on the take something pre-built and hack away at it until it looks the way I want it to. In this situation, I think we will be better served doing it from scratch.
Makes sense.
Any other questions here?
We are not going to have this be interactive, right?
No, it does not need to be responsive. It does not need to be interactive. So we are building this for one screen size. It does not need to look good on mobile. And for the advanced students on end of Wednesday or beginning of Thursday, we'll actually make it so if you open it on a really big screen or a really tiny screen, we throw up a warning message that says like, yo, we're just beginners here. We didn't make this responsive. In fact, Netflix had such a hard time at making this responsive that I don't even know if the Netflix page will load on mobile. I believe See if this has changed. Oh, they finally have updated this to be mobile responsive. But if you look at, I can stop my screen share and share this with you guys. And it's going to say unable to connect and throw a little hissy fit. Oh, come on. I just did this with another student. Letting me down zoom. Unable to connect. Well, so much for that idea. If you pull up, if you pull up Netflix on your own site, on your own, so careful, Artrell, that's the Netflix app. The Netflix app is totally different than the mobile responsive Netflix homepage. So sometimes companies will have 4 different UI UX teams, user interface and user experience. They will have what people see on desktop or tablet displays. They will have what people see if they go to their website on mobile. They will have a team that is responsible for what they see on iOS apps. And they will have a 4th team for what the Android users see. And so it is really dependent on the device. And sometimes you get access to more screens. I'm going to try this one more time and give up if it doesn't work. Sometimes you get access to more screens. No, it just hates me. More features if you're building in a mobile app because it's what they call closer to the metal. In other words, you have more access to the hardware features because you're building in the specific operating system for that device. But if you guys pull up Netflix on your devices, you'll see it's an entirely different design. There are only 2 images across and there's no header image, right? The nav bar up at the top is completely different. That is because Netflix realized, hey, well, this is a really immersive and interactive site. If you've got a 13 or 15-inch monitor, that design does not scale down well to a smaller mobile device. So for that very reason, they completely have a different mobile site where the design completely changes if you try and open it on a mobile device in the web browser, which is totally different from the app. Just due to interactiveness and stuff like that. Okay, any other questions on this? I feel like I'm rambling more than usual tonight.
Nope.
Feeling like we've mastered this gridding out so much that we're ready for this to be the last project we have to grid something out of? All right, so we're gonna do
Not
our
mastered, but it is.
Not mastered, but maybe more comfortable with this tool, more comfortable with seeing the process and understanding that we don't always dive right into code.
Right.
Okay, so we are going to go through and we're going to generate our outline. So give me 1 second. I'm going to create a new document and I'm in the wrong section.
Where the fuck am I right now? Oh. Academic history.
Schneider, you're still on. Your mic's hot.
Gotcha.
There we go. That's what I was looking for. Okay. We are not in week 4 anymore, are we? We are in week 5. I'm going to create a new file called Netflix outline. Yeah, I'll share my screen in 1 second. Let me get this set up. Everyone can view, copy. Let me put this in the Netflix div outline. We're going to go ahead and link that in. And I'm going to share here. Thank you for the reminder. Okay, so I just put in this Netflix div outline here. We're going to go through with this open and we're going to start outlining things, right? Because everyone sees things different visually. So some people benefit from an outline. Some people benefit from the visual. Some people just want to get right into the code. That's completely fine. So we start with our container. And I'm going to recognize here that this design goes to the full width of the screen, right? So it's not, if I pull my window all the way out, the design is going to spill out with it. It's not going to be contained all in the center of the screen if my design gets big enough. So because that design is going to spill out in a very fluid-like manner to the edge of the screen, it's going to be a container fluid instead of a regular container. Now I dive into my outline, right? Because everything's going to go inside that container fluid. So I start with a div for my nav bar. And in that div, I'm going to break it down and say, hey, this div needs to be a row, because inside of that row, I'm going to have a col1 for the Netflix logo. That's right here. Okay, now I'm going to have a col8 for all of my links. Then I'm going to have a col3 for my upper right icons. Okay, now normally we would move on to the next section of this, but I think it's helpful to break this down a little bit more because this site is so complex. It has so much going on in it. So what I'm going to do, my Netflix logo, hopefully that's pretty self-explanatory. That's going to be the IMG tag that's going to make that show up. Then we come down here and we look at all of our links. Because we want these links to be side by side, we don't necessarily want to do divs, right? Because divs by default are block elements. They take up 100% of the width of the space that we put them in. So but we do want them separated. We don't want to just put spaces between them because we want to be able to write some CSS that gets the styling just right. What HTML element should we use there in order to get those words side by side, but still give us control to be able to get to them in our CSS? Arturo.
Is that a span?
That is a span. So we're going to do several span tags here. And then in parentheses, we're going to put what goes inside of them, right? So home, TV shows, movies. And I'm going to stop at new and popular. Although if you want to keep going on, you can, just for the sake of time. And then our col3, we've got a couple things going on there. We've got the search bar, the search icon. We've got a link for kids that I'm actually going to leave out. We've got our notifications bell, and we've got our profile image. We're going to play around with icons when we get to that, and also learn about different fonts in this example. I'm going to use Google Fonts for the first time.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but for our project, do you still want us to include the kids section as well?
Nah, it's fine. You can leave it out. Anything I leave out of the outline, you can leave out in the actual project. Keep in mind that this is not a homework assignment that you're turning in. So you can actually do whatever you want with it. If you want the kids links to show up, you can do that. Based off of the media queries, you can start playing around with how do I get different content to show up. You could take a stab at mobile responsiveness if you wanted to. All of that is up to you. If you want to go use your own images, put in your own show titles, that's all fine. Don't feel constrained by this image of when you're making your own. Okay, so now we come out of that and I go, I'm done with my green. So I come out and I say, where is my green over? These are all of the columns. So I need to come all the way out to that outside level and say, hey, I'm going to do another div here, and I'm using columns inside of it. So it's got to be a row. And that row, we're going to call that headline show. Headline content. Right, that's our headliner. That's going to be the big marquee thing. That's going to be what we're interested in. And I'm going to leave a note in here that says image background, because that image is not actually going to be its own IMG tag. We're going to learn how to use CSS to put that image in the background. Okay, now that we're in here, we're going to come in and we're going to do our col5. And inside that col5, I hope you guys know when I do a col5 that's a div. In that col5, we are going to break that down and say we've got a div for our Netflix series. We got a div for the show title. We got a div for trending. We've got a div for show description. And then we got a div for our buttons. Okay, but we should go a step further in that. In our buttons, we're going to have a button for play and a button for more info. And if we really want to get technical, in that play button, we're actually going to have a play icon and the play text. And same for down here, we're going to have the info icon and the info text. And we can break these down a little further. We can say IMG for the Netflix N, and then the word series, the show title. Hopefully that's pretty self-explanatory. The trending, we've got the top 10 image icon, and the number 2 text. And I hope everything else is pretty self-explanatory there. So we're able to start breaking that down and start realizing that even though we are, our container is 1, the row is 2, the column is 3, the div is 4, even though we're 4 levels of indentation deep here, we can identify that there's 5 and 6 in here because pieces of that div still need to be broken out. Now, we could have used a row system in there and done a column and a column, but sometimes when content looks like it should be together, it actually belongs together and shouldn't go in separate columns. So it just depends on your layout. Not saying you couldn't make the columns work, but starting to identify how we break all of that down. So I'm going to say, hey, after all of this, there is another col5. And I'm making sure that lines up. We can see that it's an open circle here, an open circle here. My indentation is lining up just like our code. We're going to say col5, and this is going to be our spacer. And then we're going to say, hey, at the end there, we've got our col2. And that's going to be for our right icons. And that's going to have the restart icon and the TV rating. All right, and then we just need to finish this off. We're going to do a div. It's not going to be a row, but it's going to say, actually, let's make all of these sections. And this, we're actually going to make a nav bar. Nav. Okay, and in this final section, that's going to be a row, actually second to last section, we're going to say it's a section, and in that section, we need to put the category title, and then we are going to do, I changed my mind. We're going to do a div that's going to have the category title, and then we're going to do another div, and this time it's going to be a row, and in those cols there's going to be all of the show images, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. So 3, 4, 5, 6. Now you may say, Max, why didn't you just do div and div? That section isn't really required. Can't we shift all of that over a little bit? Well, the idea here is because we're putting them all in the same section for an assistive device, right? For someone who may have a handicap, it makes it easier for that screen reader to say, hey, this category title is actually related to all of the images underneath it. So that's why we put it all in its own section tag. From a visual perspective, it actually won't make any difference. But from an accessibility perspective, by putting it all in one section, the screen reader is able to say, hey, all of these images relate to the category title because they're in the same parent. Okay, any questions on any of that? No, this is boring. I know this is hands off, but hopefully this sets us up well to dive in and recreate this whole thing. Artrell, go ahead.
So the category title for this section we're in now is for the release in the past year, right?
Correct.
So when we continue, are we going to have another category title? And I'll say like trending now and so on and so forth.
You
And the
got
third
it.
one will be okay.
Yeah, and I'll put a note in here. Outline stops here, but there are 2 more sections to go.
So it's essentially the same type of code, but with different text forms and different images.
Yes. Man, isn't that frustrating to have to repeat that code? I wish there was some framework we could use to make reusable components that we could use. Foreshadowing.
I see Caitlin smiling, so I'm guessing that's a thing.
Definitely a thing. I don't think I could work on what we work on without that.
Yeah, so
would be
Karen,
crazy.
you asked a good question about Bootstrap. Bootstrap is providing us components, certainly design components that we can use. But if we want 3 cards to show up on the screen, we've got to put in that div, all that div 3 times in a row. Wouldn't it be cool if we could just make one div that had all of the styling and everything in it, and then we could pass in properties that we wanted to show up differently across all of those cards and have it apply. So that's what one of the features that React brings us is the ability to say, this is what a card looks like. Here's the different dynamic content that can show up in the card, and then be able to reuse that code over and over again.
Got it.
But we are 6 weeks, 7 weeks away from learning React. So we'll get to that. Okay, we are gonna head to break, but first I want to get all of our code set up and our live share going and us rocking and rolling. So I'm going to minimize both our outline and our image. Now, you may find that working off the image is more helpful for you. You may find working off the outline is more helpful for you. You may find that you would like a second external monitor because you want to work off both of them. Well, too bad. You can only have one external monitor on those laptops. But make sure you're juggling your windows and making sure that you know what's minimized, what's in another virtual desktop. I do want to touch on this really quickly. When you swipe up with 3 fingers, you're able to see these virtual desktops if you put your mouse up at the top. If you don't see a second desktop, you can go over here and hit that little plus icon. And it will open another virtual desktop for you. I'm actually going to utilize them for my design. So in my second virtual desktop, I'm going to open that. I'm going to go down to the bottom and I'm going to get these 2 opened, swipe back up to get into mission control view. I'm going to grab my outline and dump it onto the second desktop. And I'm going to grab my preview and drag it over there as well. So when I click on desktop 2, I am able to see my outline and my mock-up all gridded out. And if I take 3 fingers and swipe to the swipe, I can easily go between those 2 desktops. So this is just going to make it easier for me to be able to reference this while still being able to swipe over and see everything over here. Now, that's up to you if you want to do that same thing. If you want to use your other monitor, that's fine. We're reaching that point where we've got so many different things open that we want to utilize all of these tools that that are built into the operating system. So I'm going to have this open over here just so I can swipe between the two of them and reference them. However, I'm going to encourage that you guys open up both this mockup file, which I will post in the Slack live stream, so you can use mine if you prefer. But I'm going to recommend that you guys have all of this open, because relying on me to be screen sharing the right thing, you're going to get really frustrated. You're going to be like, can you go back to the, no, I can't. Open it yourself, so you guys are in control of what's open and what you're looking at, because I'm going to be coding at a different speed and referencing different things at different times. So I would encourage everyone have the mockup open, have the outline open, and then also have the live stream open and the code that we're working on and our live share. And that's what we're going to work on now. So I'm in my VS Code. If whatever you have in VS Code you don't care about overwriting, you can go to File, Open Folder. If you want to keep open whatever you have open, go up to the top, go to File and New Window, and make sure that you're at a good starting point there. From there, we are going to go to File, Open Folder. In Open Folder, I'm going to go to my desktop, to my code. I'm going to make a new folder called Week 5. Inside my Week 5, I'm going to make a new folder called Day 1. I know I'm going fast. Again, this is about understanding what our objective is here, not necessarily following step by step. So our goal here is make a new Week 5 Day 1 folder. We're going to go ahead and hit open on that. I will start a live share with y'all and put it in the live stream channel, so you can join that if you would like. And then we're going to go through the steps that we've been doing over and over and over again. I'm going to make a new file, index.html. In our index, we're going to hit exclamation point, enter, and have it drop in all of our HTML. We're going to make a new file called style.css. Remember, we do not put in the hashtag at the beginning of that file name. That is VS Code dropping our icon in for us. In my style.css, I'm going to put an H1 with a color of red. I'm going to save that. I'm going to go back to my index.html. I know I'm going really fast. Hopefully these steps are sinking in. We're going to do our link with a rel of style sheet and our href of style.css. We come down to the body. We put an H1 in here of hello. We save. We go live. We get our red hello. It's in a hideous Times New Roman font. So the last step that we do before break, we go to getbootstrap.com, we go to docs, we go to introduction, we scroll down to the second step, we grab our link tag, we copy that, we go back to our index.html, we paste in our bootstrap link above our style.css. So if we need to override our bootstrap, we can. We come back over here, we get a red hello in Arial and not in Times New Roman, and we are good to go. Obviously going to give you guys a minute to catch up on all of that because that was a gazillion steps. However, if you need me to repeat any one of them in particular, or if you were following along and got lost, let me know and I will repeat them. And if you're realizing, hey, I learned better by just taking notes, and when I'm not coding along with Max, I learned this content a lot better, don't freaking code along with me. You don't need to turn this homework assignment in. If you are someone who is going to learn better by taking notes and then after class trying little bits of it, do that. You do not need to follow along with me. What you need to do is understand what the code is that my code is doing and how we figured out to do that step. So if you are someone who's like, I start coding along and by the third div, I'm lost and I'm frustrated, don't code along with me. There's no expectation for that. However, if you are someone who's been coding along with me up until this point, and you're like, I can keep up with you 90% of the time, push yourself, do that 90%, because you're probably someone who learns better by coding along and actually following along and pushing yourself to understand through that doing. Just because you have been in an education system that forces you to learn the same way as everyone else does not mean that you are in that system anymore. Everyone learns how to code a little bit differently. Do not feel obligated to follow along with me. With that said, it is a requirement to be on camera, to be engaged, and I am hoping that everyone is asking questions, and I mean everyone, yes, even the quiet ones or the shy ones. Ask questions, engage. That's how we know you guys are getting it. I'm stopping here for a poll before we let everyone loose.
Hey Max, would you mind like copy and pasting that outline?
I'll paste the link to it in the live stream channel and then you can grab it from there. It's also in tonight's outline. But I will dump it into live stream. Oh, no, I will not dump it into live stream. When I copy and paste it out of Google, it looks like this. And I don't think that's going to be helpful for you. So instead, I'm just going to paste the link in there and you can manage your windows and go from there. See if sometimes if you download it, open it, and copy and paste it like this. Nope, that did not help either. You get the link, sorry. We're going for a red hello here. We got 12 votes in. If anyone needs a step repeated, don't be afraid to ask. If you were coding along, if you're not coding along, go ahead and hit no, but keep going. As long as you understood every step that we just did, million miles an hour, but basic linking files together, getting our bootstrap working, creating new files, open new folders, all of that good stuff. Week 5, last week for HTML and CSS. The good news is we stay in VS Code. The good news is we keep using the week and days. The good news is we're going to be creating new JavaScript files. All of that stays the same, but we level up a little bit more. We learn about the terminal and how to navigate around the terminal in JavaScript. We move forward with those steps. If you do have a red hello showing up in your browser, you can go on break, be back at 7:20, because I really want to knock some of this Netflix site out. Be back at 7:20. I will stick around for the next couple minutes if you got stuck on a step.
Should the document title be Netflix project?
Yeah, that's fine. Last call for questions. All right, go on break. See you guys at 7:20.
Okay.
Go for it.
Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Just so far, I don't know how to get the Netflix button.
That's fine. We're going to start off there. You are on the right track. Okay, looks like we got the majority of the people back, so I am going to go ahead and dive in here. Okay, so remember, I've got my mockup and my outline in a separate desktop, a virtual desktop, right? So I can swipe between the two of them with 3 fingers. Again, going to encourage everyone to have their own windows open because we're moving around a lot, right? you guys need to be in control of what we're looking at. So I'm going to get started. And as with most things, I'm going to go to my outline and I've got my container fluid. That's what everything is going inside of. So I'm going to start with my div class equals container fluid. And first thing I noticed right off the bat, I'm missing a closing div tag. I must have done something wrong there. So I want to make sure that whenever I have my opening div, I've got my closing div. I'm going to go back to my outline, and I started with a nav, which is going to be a class of row. So up here, we're using that semantic HTML, right? We're not just using generic divs. There's going to be no difference between a div and a nav, but when a screen reader is going through and looking at our code and telling the user what kind of content is inside of that div, they're going to look at that and go, oh, that's a nav element. I know that that's going to be your navigation inside of there. But just like any other HTML element, we can apply a class to it, and we're going to apply our row. Well, why are we using our row? Because we know there are columns inside of here. So I come back over, and I'm going to just break out my divs into my columns with placeholder content to see what the spacing looks like. So I'm just going to put the number 1 in there. I'm going to do another div class. I'm going to look at my outline. We got our 1. Now we're going to get our 8 for our links. So I'm going to say col 8. And then I'm going to put 2 in there. And I'm going to do my div class, and I'm going to do my col, and I'm going to look, and I've got my col 3 from here, right? So hopefully everyone is breaking this outline down and is able to look at something like this Netflix logo and say, hey, that's our col 1. This whole home TV shows and links all the way over, hey, that's our col 8 links right here. And finally, our col 3, our upper right icons, that is coming over and is lining up with our pink outline right here, right? So we're just breaking that down. We're finding out ways to take something very visual, destructure it into an outline, and now that we've got it in pure text form, we're able to apply it directly in our code. Let me clear all of that and go back here. Okay, so my col 3, and that's going to be number 3. So I save, I come over to my go live, and I've got my 1, my 2, and my 3. Now they may look a little weird. Sorry, let me zoom out so it looks the same. But positioning wise, we're able to start looking at this and going, oh, you know, that's roughly the right size for the logo. And then our links are going to go in here, and there's plenty of space for them. And then over here, this is where all of our icons are going to go and show up. Okay, we're making good progress there. The first thing I notice, though, is when I go to my outline, what's the first thing you noticed visually about all of this? The very first thing.
Is it in
Go ahead. Exona, go for it.
I was gonna say indentation.
Before we even get to the indentation, what's the most visually obvious part of all of this? If you opened your eyes for the first time to see this, what would you describe that design as?
Are you talking about the Netflix outline, or are you talking about
The actual window, not all the columns we drew on it. Artrell, go ahead.
I'd say the photo.
But even more basic than the photo, what kind of theme are we going here?
So you're talking about the text, like the font of the words?
Everything is black, right? Everything is this dark theme. And so visually, it doesn't make sense for us to build down the page and turn everything black as we go. It makes more sense to just set the background to black everywhere. Set the text color to white everywhere. And now whenever we're designing, we've got our basic visual down because everything is a dark theme. So we need to, before we even put in our Netflix logo, instead of going one by one and going, this is a background black, and this is a background black, and this is a background black, we want to go up to the highest level. So I want to go, I don't need my H1 anymore. That's just to make sure our pages are linked all the way up at the body level, right? Everything that's containing our content in that body, I'm going to do a background of black and a color of white. That color is that font color, right? Why is it not called font color? No idea. That's the way it is. So now when I come over here, all of a sudden, even though we just flipped the colors, now all of a sudden we're like, oh, we can build this site. Look, our styling is plugging right along. So now I come over here and now I want to get down into my actual content breakdown. I want to start getting my images in there. The first thing I notice is I'm missing the Netflix logo. Well, you could go,
Max,
yes.
why is it body and not root?
Root is only, actually, that's a good question. If I do root, the root does it. It's a really good question. So basically they're saying root is the equivalent of targeting the HTML element. And so using root is the equivalent of saying HTML here. However, there are like 3 layers of getting into your content. We can apply it to the body element, which is going to be for all of our content. And then for very technical reasons, if you needed to target something higher than that, you could target the HTML element. And then for some very technical edge case reason, CSS engineers said, we need a level even higher than that. We need access to the root. And so that's why they made that root selector. However, because this styling is applying to everything in the content of our code, I personally like to target the body, although targeting the HTML or the root hypothetically would work here. I just prefer to grab it at that body level because it's pertaining to the content of our site.
That makes sense. I was kind of lost on like if they were interchangeable or where one was more usable than the other.
Mostly interchangeable, except that they're in a hierarchy. So body is like the lowest, and then HTML is the parent of that, and then root is like the grandparent of all selectors. There is no selector above a root.
Okay, thank you.
I did not know the answer to that until I pulled up MDN, and it says it's identical to the selector HTML, except that specificity is higher. So basically saying, hey, it applies the highest level of selector is that root.
Right. So using root will override another selector, right?
Using root will override HTML, just like using HTML will override body.
Got you.
Okay, so we're going to keep going here. We've got this broken out. Now we're looking at our mockup, and we got to get our Netflix logo. So we could normally get that from anywhere, but as part of today's outline, I have a YourFlix logo generator in here. If you pop this link open, you can actually come down here and enter whatever you would like. So you can say something like Maxflix in there and hit generate, and it will actually generate a little Netflix looking logo for you. If you would like to use that, you can. However, you don't have to. What you do definitely want to do is here for this images for Maxflix, there is a zip file. This zip file contains a boatload of images for you, including all of the show images. So I would highly recommend everyone use this one and download it, because this is going to have a bunch of images that we'll need in it as we go through and build it. So if I pop that open, it's going to show me these weird folders in here. What we want to do is hit the little download icon in the top right. So I'm going to download that. It's going to take a minute, and I'm going to get my image.zip. Instead of dragging that zip file in, I'm going to click on that zip file so it makes my little image folder for me. From there, I'm going to take that and drag that over into my day one folder. And I'm going to say copy folder. Do not add it to your workspace. You want to copy that entire folder worth of images over. Mine's called image 3. If you have a number after yours, you can go ahead and rename that just to IMG. And if you pop that open, you will see there are a ton of images in here, including a Bridgerton cover photo. And then you'll also see the logo for my Maxflix. So I'm just going to stop there for a minute. I want to make sure everyone has your IMG folder, not .zip. You want to make sure the folder is unzipped, and you want to make sure you can see all of your icons in there. If anyone needs help, let me know. Just launching that poll. Again, you can download that zip file from tonight's outline. Zona, go ahead.
Can you show us again how to do that? I'm sorry.
problem.
I'm a little.
So in week 5, day 1 outline, there's a link for images for Maxflix.
Yep.
Click on that. Click on the little img.zip pop-up. In
Mhm.
that new tab in the top right, hit the download button. That's going to download a zip file in your downloads. Go ahead and click on that zip file to extract it into the folder.
I don't have that zip file.
Did you hit the download button?
Yeah. It shows images. The image file folder.
Oh, okay. It probably already auto opened it for you. That's fine. Take the image folder here and drag it into your day 1 folder in VS Code.
Okay. Sorry. I have so many things. Okay. So day 1. No. It's not doing it.
Share screen.
So
Um,
do you want?
So from your downloads folder, go ahead and open the downloads folder first.
It's on the other screen.
Just move your mouse over to this screen and put the mouse down at the bottom. Okay, and then downloads is that one. So click on that to open it, and then take IMG, that folder, and drag it into VS Code.
Okay. Right here.
Yep. And then copy folder. And then pop that open and make sure all the images are in there, and you're good to go.
Okay.
Next.
And this is how it should show up.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
I heard Karen, go ahead.
Yes, Max, this is week 5, day 1, correct?
Week 5, day 1, yes.
Okay.
Just wait until we get to April Fool's Day, because then I'll change the day code on you.
I'm sorry, I tried to keep up with you, but I found the zip file and it's not letting me download it.
Or share screen.
Yeah. Wait a minute. Oh, shoot. Have to maximize the window then, I guess. Yeah, there.
Your thought was I was going to go 1,000,000 miles an hour this class, didn't you? So I was going to
Yeah.
give you no chances to catch up. Okay, so you want to back out of this. So hit the little back icon right here. You want to just be at the root level of it. Try again. Okay, now from here, go back one more time. Okay, at this level, you should be able to hit the little download icon up at the top, and that will download the whole zip file for you. Or it will be really weird and not do that. I would recommend using Chrome instead of Safari. I have no idea why it's doing that, but I think you'll have better luck in Chrome.
Okay. I can't open Chrome.
Is it on another window?
Yeah, it is over here. Okay, so Canvas. And then once I should be able to just download it on there, right?
Yes.
Okay.
download it, open the zip, and then drag the folder into your week 5 folder.
Okay.
Okay, so now that we've got our code working, we can actually test it out. So in here, we said in our col 1, we want to get this logo.png to show up, right? But this logo.png is inside of an IMG folder. What is not inside of our IMG folder is index.html. So we need to keep account of that when we put our IMG tag in. So I'm going to say IMG src, that stands for the source of the image. And now I can't just put logo.png. I need to say my logo is inside the IMG folder as logo.png. So I come over here, I put in my closing arrow tag, I take a look at my code, and it's there, but it's massive. Doesn't really look massive, but it's on top of my 2. I'm like, you little son of a, look at how tiny the little Netflix logo is here, and look at how big it is here. Well, just like we can use a container fluid to say, hey, spill into the contents of the window, we can also say that this logo needs to be an image fluid. In other words, don't be bigger than the column you are in, or expand yourself to fit inside of that column. So we come back over here, and now I've got my tiny little cute Maxflix logo. And if we expand it, you'll see it actually grows a little bit to fit in with the screen. We're using our grid system there to size everything out properly. Schneider, go ahead.
I keep hearing image fluid. I'm pretty sure I have an idea of what it means, but you know, what does it mean?
Yeah, so it's image fluid is saying that if you think about a fluid liquid, it's always going to expand to the space that it is in, right? So if you pour water into a cup, the water is going to take the form of the cup. It's not going to be any wider than that, any smaller than that. It's going to spill out to the edges. Same goes for any logo or container fluid, right? The container fluid is going to spill its way out to the full width of the container. Same for the image fluid. It's going to make that image pretend like it is fluid and just go to its parent size. The container that it is in, or the div that it is in, or the window that it is in, it's going to assume that height or width.
Okay, got you.
Okay, I'm pausing there because getting images working for the first time can be frustrating. I'm going to relaunch the poll, and I'm going to see where you guys are at. You should have either a Maxflix logo or some kind of image showing up. If you've got a broken image icon, I can help you get over that, but hopefully we're understanding what the class image fluid is doing. We're understanding that it's inside the div. We're understanding that the IMG slash part is showing the folder. We're understanding that if we put another slash in there, we could go another folder level deep. We're understanding that we downloaded a zip and we moved it into the right folder, so we have access to it. Going fast. There's no shame in asking about a step if you're lost.
Max, I'm having an issue. When I go live, it's now going live on the IMG file. It's not going live on my index.
Share your screen, and then Kalai, I'll come to you next. Okay, that is because your IMG folder is not inside of your day 1 folder. So if you collapse day 1 there, you'll see image is not inside of it. Go ahead and move that inside your day 1. And try and go live now. Okay, so the other problem here is you see how this says untitled workspace up at the top? That means you didn't open the folder. You somehow got this code open another way. So I would go click in VS Code to make that the main. Hold on, you're in Chrome there. There you go. Now you're all set. So file, open folder, and pop open day one. Oh, yeah, you got it. And don't save that. You don't need a workspace configuration. Okay, now your images folder isn't there, but at least your go live should work. So if you want to just redrag your images into that, just go down down. There you go. That's fine. You can just throw it there and copy. Oh, that's your mistake. Never, ever, ever do we want a workspace. So that opened a different workspace, and that's causing the problem. So file, open folder again. Open your day one. Don't save the workspace. Okay, now when you drag your images in there, you want to copy the whole folder in. You don't want it to be in a workspace. Now you're all set. And when you go live, it should be in the right spot. So basically what's happening there is VS Code is like, oh, you want to be working with this images folder. I'll just bring this into a workspace and you can have the day 4 folder open and the images folder open at the same time. And we're like, no. We are not trying to open both folders. We're trying to copy the images into the day 1 folder. And so that's what those two options are asking you. So if you now have untitled workspace at the top left of your VS Code, you're going to want to file, open folder, go back to day 1 and move that in again, but hit copy folder instead of add items to workspace. Workspaces are more of an advanced feature of VS Code, and honestly one that I don't like because it gets confusing between folders and workspaces. Kalai, go ahead.
I have the same problem. So the images is like, it came as a big one in the workspace. So I'm gonna share the screen. Can you see it, Max?
Yes. So what you're going to do is go to file, open, click in that VS Code window just to make sure it's active, and then go to click hold on. Yeah, click on the other one, that one. Okay, now go to file up at the top and open folder. And go to your week 5 day 1 and hit open.
Yeah.
Now, don't save on that.
Don't check.
Don't save. Okay. And now we want to grab our images folder and drag it in.
Okay. So I can just drag it in the.
Yep.
Yeah.
And drop it there. And now hit copy folder.
Okay.
And now you should be good to go.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
Yep. Any other questions? Okay. So now we've got our Maxflix in there. We just keep on plugging along here, right? We've got our, I'm going to swipe back over to my outline. We've got our col 8, that's going to be for my links, and we've got all of these span tags in here. So we can just start plugging them in. We go to our col 8. I'm going to take out the word to, and I'm going to put in a span in here, and the first span tag is going to say home. The next span tag, hopefully we're getting more comfortable with that autocomplete. We hit the closing arrow, it puts the closing tag in for us. We're going to say TV shows. We come over here, we put in another span. That is going to be for my movies. And then finally, we do our last span, and that is going to be new and popular. You want to keep going? Of course you can. I come over here and I go, all right, that's all showing up, but that's not showing up the way this is showing up. What's the one thing that we notice here visually that's different between this and this?
Spaces between.
The spaces between. So we could do that as either margin or padding. Why? Because we're not using a border. But I don't really want to target all of my span tags because there's a very good chance that somewhere else in this project, I will be using spans. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here and I'm going to add an ID to this called links bar. Again, I'm using camel casing here. Capital B because it's the second word that we are putting together without a space, right? So that needs to match over here. We need to make sure that it's a capital B here. Swear to God, if I help any one of you and you're missing the capital B, I'm going to hunt you down. All right, in our links bar, we don't want to just target the bar itself. We want to target the span inside that links bar. And in here, we can add some margin on the left of, I don't know, 10px and on the right of 10px. See what that looks like. I come over to my code. Maybe a little too much there. So let's pull that down to 5 and 5. For this, I'm also going to try shrinking the font size. So what happens if we go to like 12px? All right, I'm liking that. I'm digging it. And I'm going to go look over here and I've got a little breathing room on the top and bottom. But I'm going to be careful there. I don't want that to apply to just that span. I want it to apply to the whole top, the whole nav bar. So I'm going to come back and in my nav, let's add some padding on the top of that of 5px and padding on the bottom of it of 5px. I can dig that. That's looking pretty good. I like that. Or Terrell, go ahead.
I have a stupid question.
Mhm.
Why didn't we have to put an identifier in the nav section over there?
This to target this?
Yeah.
For the same reason we didn't have to put a body identifier on the body tag. Any HTML element we can target directly as long as we don't put a period or a pound sign in front of it. It will assume to be that element that we're targeting. That also goes for divs. If we wanted every div on this site to have a 1 pixel solid white, we could actually target every single div on the page. Obviously, we very rarely do that because we use divs so frequently. But anything in our CSS, we can target by either using the HTML element itself, like the span, by using an ID, using the pound sign, by using a class, which we haven't used yet, but we could hook onto this col8 if we wanted to, and target all col8s. Or we can use what is called our pseudo selectors to target a specific version of what we're trying to target. In fact, we're actually going to do that right now. In our links bar, we can target the span tag and use that pseudo selector. That pseudo selector is just using the colon. And we're going to say, hey, when you hover over one of those links, make them gray. So now we come over here, and when we hover over them, we get a nice little color change. Okay, that's nice, but you know what's annoying? That text highlighting cursor. If I were really clicking on that, I wouldn't want a cursor, or I wouldn't want that highlight to be there. I would want a different cursor to be there. And the cursor that I want to be there is the pointer one. So I come back over here, I go and I hover over it, and now I get a little pointer hand instead. Now, Max, how would you know that that one is called the pointer? The cursor seems like there are a lot of different options there. Well, if we go back over and click on our cursor, VS Code, you're going to show me up? You're going to show me up. That's cool. Okay. We hover over cursor and it shows us what all of the different options are that we can use for our cursor. Now that's kind of helpful, but you still have no idea what all of these are, right? So if we go up and click on that MDN reference and pop it open, they'll actually show you a breakdown of all the different cursors and what they look like. So we've got our cursor pointer here, and if we hover over that, we can actually see what it looks like on our system. If we wanted some kind of weighting indicator, we can hover over that and see that as well. This is actually controlled at the operating system level, so they will look a little bit different depending on what operating system you have, but this gives you a good idea of what all the cursor options are available for you if you're building drag and drop or something like that. Okay, any questions on that?
Can you show us your code, the picture and the cursor and how the cursor looks on the? Mine is not doing that.
Share your screen.
That pseudo selector thing is super cool. I didn't even know that's how it works.
No problems here. Let's look at your HTML.
I didn't put it anywhere, or was I supposed to?
You have a lens bar.
Oh, links. There we go. Thanks.
Yep, no problem. Okay, so we're gonna keep going unless anyone has questions. We're actually going to take a quick stop here. We're gonna try a different system for attendance tonight, just to make sure that everyone is engaging and paying attention. So we are going to launch a quick poll. If you guys are in class and paying attention, go ahead and vote. Give everyone a full minute on attendance to be fair to everyone. Nice thing about Zoom is it has a timer counting down. Okay, let me remember to download. Oh, sorry. Give me 1 minute. The downside of using new systems is that it backfires sometimes. Okay, we are gonna roll forward here. So, all right, I've got my okay, so we're gonna keep going here. We come back over to our design, and we've got this nice little search icon here. Now, of course, we could just go through and go get an image of a search bar, or we've been using our emojis, but oftentimes as web developers, we want to use a lot of different icons, right? Wouldn't it be nice if there was some library that allowed us to get access to icons? Well, there are actually several of them. One of them is made by a company. The product is called Font Awesome, and the company's name is called Fort Awesome. But while that is a popular one, there is one that has gotten more popular recently, and that's made by Material. Material is actually a design standard that Google has developed. So what we are going to do is get that set up. Now, a lot like Bootstrap, we can't just go about using the icons. We actually have to put a link tag in so we have access to them. So I'm going to go to Chrome. I'm going to do a new tab, and I'm going to do a search for material icons. The first link that should come up is this material icons guide through Google Fonts. Hey, that's convenient. We're going to use Google Fonts in just a minute. So I'm going to pop open the material icons. And then I'm going to scroll down until it says setup method number 1 using Google Fonts, and it has that link tag. We're going to take that link tag. You can hit the little copy icon or highlight it and hit Command C. Hopefully this is no surprise to you guys. Between our link for our Bootstrap and our link for our style.css, we're going to paste in that icon tag. So again, that is now my third link tag. Archel, go ahead.
What website did you get that from again?
I did a Google search for material icons,
Mhm.
and then I went to the material icons guide right here.
By developers. Okay.
Caitlin, can you throw a link for that into the outline for tonight?
Yep. Actually, I need edit access, Max.
Oh, my bad. We can fix that.
Would it matter if we put the link below like the CSS?
Your CSS, it would, because the styling of that CSS file would overwrite the styling that you put in there. So whatever the last link tag is going to be the one that overwrites everything else.
All right. So I'm on that webpage, and where did you copy your link from, Max? I'm sorry.
Scroll down to icon font for the web. It will say setup method number 1 using Google Fonts. That's the one that we want.
Okay.
I put the link in the chat here to just in case for now, and I'll put it in the outline in a second.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to keep rolling forward here. We go back to our code and we're like, well, nothing changed. Well, of course, nothing changed. We just put in the CSS. We haven't actually browsed for any of the icons or found any of the ones that we wanted yet. So we're going to go back up here to getting icons, maybe? Yes, under the getting icons, there's browsing and downloading individual icons. Okay, well, we don't need to download them. We're going to use a different method, but we can click on that material icon library, and this is going to give us a new site that we can browse all of our different icons. So the icon that we're looking for is this search bar right up at the top, right? So I'm going to do a search for search, and oh, that's convenient. I like that magnifying glass. That's what I want to use. So I'm going to click on that, and it's going to give me all of these different ways that I can insert this icon. There are a gazillion ways that we can actually use this icon library. We can use these style tags. We can use this link tag. But what we're going to do, we're going to go down to this inserting the icon section. We're going to copy that whole snippet. This is Google's copy, or we can just highlight it and hit Command C. We're going to go back over to our code. Now, where do we want our search bar to show up? We want it to show up in that third column, the col 3. So I'm going to delete out the number 3, and I'm going to paste in my span tag. Now I go back over to my live code, and it didn't work. Stand by. Okay, I led you astray. My bad. Google is very finicky. It turns out that the link tag that we copied off that documentation was the wrong link. The right link tag, we did this span tag right. The link tag we need to use is the one right above it, the one that says static icon font. So go ahead and copy this one. Go back to your code, and the font that we initially pasted in, go ahead and highlight over that link tag, delete it out, and put in the link tag that we have copied. So it should have all the way at the end of it, it should say fill grad for gradient 4840000. Go ahead and paste that in instead of the link that I falsely gave you guys before. And then go back over here, and we should have our little search icon. If we do, go ahead and vote in the poll. Archo, do you still have a question, or did I answer yours? You are muted.
I'm good, I think.
Okay. Jordan, go ahead.
So if you know that I'm doing a my capstone that's kind of like this, like vaguely, I would have to do kind of the same thing. So with this zip file right here, would I just create my own, and like, are these images put in there in a specific order, or would I just randomly throw them in the folder and then just be okay doing it that way?
Randomly in the folder, and then you'll just reference the file names in your code based off of what the file names are in the folder.
Okay, word, thank you.
All right, we good to continue? Any questions on that? Okay, so I'm gonna keep rolling forward here. Okay, I go back over to my mockup. I've got that little bell icon. So I'm gonna go back over to my material icons. I'm gonna close out of this little sidebar. I'm gonna do a search for a bell. And here's this little notifications. Now, this isn't identical to what the mockup is. That's okay. You know, those icons vary. So I'm going to go down to my inserting the icon. I'm going to copy that span tag. I'm going to hope that we don't need this, because I'm hoping this is identical to the one we already have. But there's one way to find out. I'm going to go down here. I'm going to make sure I'm at the end of my search span tag, and I'm going to paste in my notifications bell and hold my breath. And we got our little bell showing up. And then finally, if I look at my documentation or my preview, I've got a little like profile icon showing up. I stupidly did not include that in the image folder, even though I thought that I did. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to go to material icons, we're going to close, and we're going to do a little search for a profile icon. You can pick any one of these. Let's pick the account box one. You can pick any one, doesn't really matter. We're going to grab that span tag. We come down here, we paste that sucker in. I go back over to my code, and there is my little profile icon. Okay, that's great, but what are we noticing about these icons? Where are they?
Oh, they're in the beginning, so you text end?
Beautiful. We come here, we throw a text end on that. They jump over to the right. I come over here and I go, there's there's a little spacing on those suckers, isn't there? So what I'll do is I'll add an ID to this called icons. I'm going to target my links bar again. I'm going to target my icons, and I'm going to target the span tag, right? Because we're narrowing our selector in. We're saying we are getting only things in the link bar, only things that are in the icons, and we're getting the spans that are inside the icons. Now, theoretically, because this is an ID, we shouldn't use that ID anywhere else on our site. So theoretically, it would be enough to just put icons here. But it doesn't hurt to be more specific and put all three of them in there. And then we can say, let's do a little margin on the left of 5px and a little margin on the right of 5px. And save. I didn't see anything change. Links bar, icon, span. Let's try 10. Let's try padding instead. Oh. It's gotten to that time in the night where it's just like, nah, screw you. I don't want to do any more styling. I don't know why that's not working.
Maybe remove the links bar. Let's see if that probably.
Oh, good call. All right. Apparently, it did not want us to work with two IDs. There may be actually some CSS that doesn't allow us to specify two IDs in a selector. Caitlin, have you ever heard of that?
No, but it's not impossible. I also never used a root tag before, so, or a root selector.
Learn something new every day. Oh, you know what the problem? No, that isn't the problem. Icon, span tags in it. Don't know.
What did it like? Is it okay to use two IDs in the same?
I think that
CSS?
that's what break. Well, we're not using this ID anywhere else. This ID is unique. The
Mhm.
problem, I think, is that we use two IDs in the selector, and that may be against CSS rules, and I just didn't know it.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Like two IDs in CSS.
I guess it makes sense though. By nature, an ID is one specific. You don't use it again.
Correct.
Okay.
So theoretically, like you said, you shouldn't have to do multiple. So maybe that's it. I can't find anything
Yeah, neither can I. I'm kind of surprised.
specifically stating it.
Kind of surprised that that's not in documentation, but I mean, like Caitlin said, it makes sense. The ID is supposed to be unique, but anyway. All right, our nav bar is done. How are we feeling? So we're just gonna get our background image in, and then we're gonna call it a night and wrap all of this up. So I go back to my outline and I'm like, looking through this, I'm like, boom, my image, my links, I got my profile showing up, I got my rows all working. All right, now I can take this and apply it directly to my code and go, hey, we were pretty spot on. Every time we indented a level, every time we did a new span or a new div, we planned all of that out here. So now, hopefully, we can not only look at this and visually see how it ties to our outline, we can take it a step further, apply our outline to our code and see how all of our code connects. And then we can take our code and look in our browser and see how that all works in there. Pretty cool, huh? All right. Feeling good about this? We're going to get our next image showing up. The problem is when we look at our design, there is text on top of the image. So we could put an image element in, but then we're going to have to do a dirty hack with negative margins to take all of our content and move it on top of the image. And while there are pros and cons to that approach, this isn't really going to work out well for us because this is really an image in the background of this div. Bobby, go ahead.
For some reason, like it's just saying the words instead of the icons in the top right.
When you grabbed your link tag, did you grab the one from the right sidebar?
Yeah, to insert an icon.
It should say static icon font and then have a link tag right above it.
Okay.
That's the one we need to use. I led you down the wrong path before. That one is actually different than the one we copied from the other page.
Okay, so use those for both for all the icons, period.
Yeah, you just need one of them for all of the icons.
Okay.
And if that doesn't fix it, let me know. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to come down here and we've got div soup going on, right? So let's add some comments in. I'm going to do a comment here that says end of container. I'm going to do something here that says end of nav. And by using those semantic elements, we're actually helping ourselves out, right? Because the fact that that's a nav and not a div makes it much easier to understand. Hey, that's our ending tag. So I come down here, I'm outside of my nav, but still in my container fluid. And now I'm going to create my first section. I come back to my outline. My section needs to be a row. So I come over here and in that section, I add a class equal to row. Then I'm looking at this and I said, this is my headline content. So I'm going to come over here and in addition to the class, I'm going to add an ID headline content. Okay, got my whole section in there. So now I should be able to apply my background image. I do my headline content. And instead of background, I'm going to use background image. Now we need to tell our CSS, this is not just a normal property heading your way. It's actually a URL. And the URL we're going to pass you is image, because we need to get inside our image folder, cover, because that's the file name, .jpeg, because that is the file extension. I save, I come back over, I look, nothing's changed. Does anyone have any guesses as to why our image is not showing up?
Pictures behind the body's color, the black one.
No, because we are inside of the section, it will know to layer on top of it. It's a good guess, though.
View height.
The height. So if we come in here and we put in the word blah, and we put in a line break, and then we put in the word blah again and another line break, we come over here and we're like, well, that's part of our image, but we want our whole image to show up. So what we're going to do is we could set a height on our headline content that would start to fix that problem. But what happens if the content inside of that div ends up pushing the image down further? Well, now we're going to run into a problem where the text is hanging out on top of the image or over it. We don't want that. So what we're going to do is we're going to apply a minimum height on this. We're going to say that there needs to be a basic height of that image. And what image height we are going to use is, I want to say 400, but I'm going to see if I can find out. Nah, I don't have it. We'll just try 400 and see what it looks like. So I come over here. Maybe it's still a little bit bigger on that. Let's look at our design again. Yeah, let's go up to 500 on that. Okay, that's looking pretty good. But if we take a look at our image, if we actually pop open that cover, you can see we're cutting out the main character. No, I haven't watched Bridgerton. Why are you asking? Okay, so we come over here and I'm looking and I'm like, well, we can't be cutting people off. So what we are going to use on that is something called background size cover. And that is going to make the image sized the way we want so that we see everyone inside of it. And if you are curious about what all the other options are, you can go into the MDN reference here, pop it open, and they will show you there's contain, there's no repeat, there's cover, there's 30%. You can specify specific numbers, all different kinds of ways you can apply your background. But now that we're set up here, we are set up for success so that when we start adding our content into this section, we've got our background image showing up and ready for us. Archer, go ahead.
So is
We're
it kind
pausing
of like
here for the
making,
night, by the way.
what'd you say?
We're pausing here for the night. This is our last step.
Okay.
Now you can go ahead.
So is it kind of like making the image fluid?
It's kind of like making the image fluid, except for the fact that it's specifically saying, hey, we're going to put content on top of this. So that image is going to go into the background. So if you think about it as like if you were using Google Docs and you put a picture in and then you wanted to put a text box on top of it, that's kind of what we're achieving here. Instead of putting the IMG tag in and saying, hey, this image is part of the page, so all the content underneath it needs to go beneath it, that's not what we're really trying to accomplish. We could always put that image in and then move all of the content underneath it on top of the image using negative margin. But now we get into icky positioning and mobile responsiveness and all kinds of issues there. So what we do instead is we say, hey, this section is going to have all of our content. This section needs to be at least 500 pixels high so the image has a place to show up. And then when we start putting our content in, because we applied it as a background image, the content will automatically show up right on top of the image instead of us having to manually overlap it.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
whole thing.
Bobby, did you have a question?
No.
Did you get your icons fixed?
No, I was trying to find that where you had that link at, where you found it at in material.
Yeah, so if you click on any one of the icons down here, it should bring up that sidebar.
Perfect.
And you say you had a.
So our final output is looking like this. We've got our zoom bar in the way. We've got, oh, come on, Max. I just closed it by mistake. We've got our nav bar in. We've got our icon showing up. We've got our background image. Doesn't look like a background image. Looks like we just put an IMG tag in there. That will change starting tomorrow. But got our background image in, and we're feeling like we're using the grid system. We learned something new tonight with Google Material Icons and pulling in those fonts. We're still utilizing Bootstrap with TextEnd in the grid system. We are learning how to pull our own images in and how to reference them using the folder name, the slashes between the folders, the file extensions. We're learning about a background image, which is something new that we did tonight. And we're feeling like, all right, I'm looking at this and I'm looking at my mock-up and I'm like, yeah, we're doing this. We're making this sucker. final code. Give you guys 1 more minute to ask any questions, and then we will switch to the terms for the evening. Always afraid that when I look down, the first thing I'm gonna see is someone raise their hand. Slack oddly doesn't play like a little sound effect when someone's hand goes up. It's a feature request I should put in. All right, any initial reactions to the project before we switch over to terms? How are we feeling?
I feel like I could do this.
Good.
Yeah.
No, asking for a vibe check.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I was gonna say just a matter of knowing like when I should use an ID over a class, or like how to properly use span still. I'm working on that, things like that. But
Yeah, so some of that doesn't really matter, right? Like you could put a class on all of those spans and target that class instead of targeting the span, and it would work completely fine. So it is there are 10 different ways of writing the code. Well, a lot more than 10, but there are 10 different ways we could write the code tonight and still get the same visual output. Now, there are ways that I could say it's considered a little bit better to not put the same class on all of those spans, because now we can not repeat that class over and over again. But there are times that we're like, hey, this is a class that we're going to use all over the site. We should just make that class once and drop that class in when we need it. So CSS selectors are a very opinionated thing. There's nothing saying we couldn't have put that class on everything and achieve the exact same output. So it's just a matter of, what makes this code easier to read. Is it easier to look at this code and say, hey, what I'm doing is I'm targeting every span tag in the icons? Or is it easier to put a class of icon on all 3 of these and then target it in my CSS as just icons? You could make the argument either way. When I do something in class, I 9 times out of 10 do it the way that I prefer to do it. And hopefully the way I prefer to do it is also considered best practice. But like I said, there's nothing wrong with putting a class on everything and kind of targeting that yourself. All right, any other reactions before we switch over to terms here?
I have a question. So when I use the prettier, even though I try to keep it keep the lines as yours, it automatically changes back to its different version. I don't know why. Why is it?
Yeah, so sometimes it's just like the closing tags that you have. So there's going to be like a slight difference somewhere that's causing your prettier to act a little bit different than my prettier. But that is kind of there's a reason they call it an opinionated code formatter, because basically what prettier says is, shut up, we don't care, we like our format and you're going to get it in our format. The downside to that is if you argue with it or don't agree with it, you don't have much flexibility. The good news is if everyone on your team is using it, you'll all have the exact same format. If you want, I can stay on after class and figure out like what line is making it go a little bit differently than mine is. But for the most part, when you start leaning into prettier and stop fighting it and start going, all right, I understand, why it's doing that or why the indentation is the way it is, you start to like the tool a lot more. But I'm going to recommend everyone keep it on for like the first week of JavaScript to see how it goes. And then after the first week of JavaScript, if you're like, I hate this thing, just let me control my indentation my way, you can totally turn it off at that point. Okay, let's switch over to terms. What terms did we learn tonight, or concepts or phrases or anything we want to capture in the notes?
Image fluid.
Image fluid works like container fluid. Makes the image width spill out to the width, to the parent divs, parent elements width. Oftentimes, the grid column width or the browser window width. What else?
I don't know if this, but definitely the pseudo root thing. This is my first time hearing about it.
Additional, more advanced selectors that allow us to target pieces of the element we are targeting. Hover nth child. What else?
So yeah, Google Fonts and linking in material icons.
Google Fonts and material icons. Much like Bootstrap, we can pull in external style sheets using link tags that open up use of additional fonts and icons. We'll get a little bit more practice with that. Starting tomorrow, we'll pull in not just the material icons, but Google Fonts as well, and be able to unlock a bunch of different font files for us as well. Anything else for this evening?
Did you happen to have a couple minutes after?
Yes, I can stay on. Anything else? Feeling pretty good? All right, if you are not following along in class, I do recommend spending a couple minutes. You don't need to rebuild the whole project, but just go back through. The code is in the live share channel. Make sure you're reviewing your notes after class and give it a minute to sink in. Some people prefer to do that first thing in the morning. They keep their notes by their bed. If they keep their notes by their bed when they go to bed, they are guaranteed to get dreams. And I get it. No one wants to dream my voice in their head at night. So settle into a system that's working for you guys, right? Project-based learning is the way of the boot camp. This is fast. If it's not fast, we're doing something wrong. So find the system that works for you, review this code. Like I said, you don't need to turn it in. We're not going to spot check you on this, but it is very, very important that you're understanding this at the level that you could write this on your own. If you are not at the point where you could sit down and attempt this and get something close, you need to invest more time into the program. You need to review last night's video. You need to assess how you're taking notes. You need to get into free code camp more. You need to review previous assignments, right? There's so many different ways that you can go about this, but we find time and time again, people who rewatch the videos and just keep pausing me and rewatching the concept until you understand it, or reach out to me in Slack or on a one-on-one and say, you did this code. I'm looking at the code. I understand that the code is working, I don't understand how you knew to write that. If that is the case, reach out to me for a one-on-one, shoot me a Slack message and ask for an explanation. Oftentimes I can send a little 3-minute video clip that you can review and be like, oh, that's what he was trying to say in class. Know that I'm here for you guys, but also hold yourselves accountable. If you are not feeling like you could write this code on your own, this is something that you need to invest in. With all of that said, I'm 3 minutes over. Unless you have a question for me, GTFO. Have a good night, everyone.
Have a good night.
Well then.
Max,
Yes.
you know, I said earlier about not knowing, or rather knowing what to use. That's what my problem is. I get the code, I know how to write it, I understand how it works. I just don't know. Like I said earlier with the idea of classes, should I use this over that? You know, I figure it's an experience thing. You know, I'll learn that as I go on, you know, this will work over this, but that's my biggest problem. It's like, should I use X over Y? Would this code work better than that code?
Yeah, so that is something that comes with experience. You also get better at identifying there's a difference between wrong and different, right? And so just because you do it differently doesn't make it wrong if it produces the same output. And so that's an important thing to keep in your mind of like, when you're feeling that imposter syndrome kick in and you're looking at the way I did it in class and you're looking at the way other people do it online and you're trying to compare yourself to that code, ask yourself, is this wrong or did I do it differently? And I think oftentimes you'll find the answer is different, and that's okay. I work with senior developers that I admire a lot, and they write the code and I go to review it and I'm like, oh, no way I would have approached it that way. And then I look at it and I go, oh, your way's more efficient, or your way might not be more efficient, but it's easier to read this code and understand how it's working. So there isn't an expectation that you're going to graduate the boot camp or you're going to make it to a senior developer and you're just going to automatically know what's right. You do, over time with experience, get better at identifying better ways of doing it and improving your own code. But at the same time, at no point do you get to the all-knowing point where you're like, I know the best way to do this and I'm going to do it that way every time. Part of writing code is going back and refactoring it. Oftentimes I'll write the code, and before I submit it in for review, I'll look back at it and go like, oh no, this needs to be cleaned up, right? And I'll go back and I'll clean up my own code. It's just like writing an essay, right? You write your essay the first time, but you're going to miss commas, you're going to have spelling errors, you're going to, have grammatical issues, all of that kind of stuff. Code is no different. But I think that the important thing to come back to is what I did wrong or is what I did different?
Much needed advice. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Kalai, go ahead.
Can I share the screen so that you can see what is it?
Yep. That looks good to me. Is there something broken?
No, I'm talking about the it doesn't match up with your line. So like
okay.
Yeah.
Let me pull up my code again. So I've got, that's my code. Let me see your code.
Yeah, I showed it to you now.
Yep, that's good. You're good. Okay. Container fluid row. So it's just the levels of indentation that don't line up. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, so what you can do, I'm going to request remote control, is I've got my tab spacing set up to be a higher level. Okay. So what I do is in here, if we go to preferences and settings, and you can see if we do tab size, modified elsewhere. Where else is it modified? You're not going to tell me. You're just going to say it's modified elsewhere.
Yeah.
That's not helpful. Come on, VS Code. The setting is overridden based on a file and the contents when editor detect indentation is on. Okay. Can we go to detect indentation? Editor tab size and editor insert spaces. Tab size, editor insert spaces. Setting is overridden when editor detect indentation is on. Is it a HTML specific thing? HTML files association HTML. Oh, well, this is really annoying. There's supposed to be a basic tab size that you can adjust.
Yeah, that's fine then. Yeah.
It won't impact your code at all. It's
Okay.
just a matter of I've got my tab sizes set to be a little larger, so it
Okay.
makes it easier to see what divs are part of another div.
Okay.
I can screenshot. I'm actually gonna take 2 screenshots, and I'll ask the class tomorrow which ones they prefer.
Okay.
And then if people prefer the smaller one, I will switch mine over to that.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
Archero, go ahead.
Yeah, I need help.
Go ahead, share your screen.
All right. So hold on, hit share dummy. Okay.
All right, good to go.
So that's mine, and that's mine.
Okay, let me request remote.
Yeah, go for it. Oh, I gotta approve it. Okay.
I do wish there was like approve always as a button option so that like every time I didn't have to ask for it, but let me see. So normally when this isn't we got an outlined and an outlined.
Ah,
I know that that's the only problem, but that was a problem. Style.css. Let me just check your head, Google Fonts. Make sure this is the right link. It appears to be material symbols. This is a time that I actually think you should copy and paste instead of typing it out.
okay.
Let me just try that with inserting the icon. I think it may be something as simple as I think they require spaces here, which is dumb. But that isn't it. Let me try and paste. Yeah, so it must have been, it's a material symbols outlined. There you go.
Okay. So now one's a notification. You have 2 notifications instead of 1. So the third one should be the
Account
box.
Account. I'm gonna, oh yeah, there you go.
Yeah, okay.
And then the last thing I noticed is in your style.css, you've got image cover, but the folder is just called IMG.
Ah, okay.
And then you're good to go.
All right. Thank you.
No problem. Good work tonight.
Appreciate it.
Jordan, do you have a question? Didn't you ask if I could stay on tonight?
Yeah, I thought we were supposed to make up that meeting afterwards. You remember how?
Okay. Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, you're cool. That's why I'm just chilling, eating some Scooby snacks.
I'll kick everyone else off and Jordan, stay on and we can meet and I'll stop the recording here.